Can I just say I've been having some serious issues with my popcorn eating lately?
Oh no, I'm so sorry to hear that.
It's messed up. The issue is that the popcorn kernels are getting stuck in my gums. Like there's a spot where it's just like, it just feels painful. Like it just gets stuck and I have to like dig it out with my like fingernail, and it's just been, I had one stuck in there because I ate some popcorn last night, and I had one stuck in bed. Like I woke up in the middle and I was like, ow, ow. Also woke up to like my daughter's having a full on argument down the hall. Like,
really?
Yeah. I was like, what is, Megan was like, she like hit me. I was like, I hear it. What is happening? It was like a full on, like, they were just,
what was the beef?
I don't even think they knew. I think it was just like there was a point where I went down to the room. I'm like sitting on the bed. They're sleeping in the same bed lately because by choice, they just want to do that. Noah is like out of the room in the hallway being like, I'm just going to go sleep in my room. And Joey's like, no. And she's like sad. And then, Noah's just like, well, then I'll come back, but you cannot say blank. Like, basically Noah wanted Joey to admit that she was like annoying her. And Joey kept on saying, but I didn't do it. And Noah was like, I'll come back. But if you say you didn't do it, I'm going to my room. It was just like, I was like holding Joey because she was crying. I was like, Noah, please. And the funny part is that like I have my like mouth tape on and I didn't take it off. So I'm like, Mom, come here. I'm like, I don't know what's happening. It was wild. And I definitely couldn't fall asleep for like 30 minutes after that. So it was interesting, but
bummer.
Anyhow, what was your topic that you wanted?
Well, it was more kitchen related, back to maybe the popcorn, but my question for you was, what have you made lately that you either loved or detested? Like, what have you had strong feelings about? Because I have something.
Yo, you do? Oh, yeah. Let's hear it. Come on.
Okay. Well, in our last episode, we mentioned my Reddit obsession. So I fell down this Reddit rabbit hole, all related to this one specific dessert cookbook called Dessert Person by Claire Saffitz. And so I was influenced by Reddit to get this because I was seeing all the pictures of people's amazing desserts they were making. And so I tried my first recipe from the cookbook last night. Not a fan.
Oh.
Not a fan.
And you're a great dessert baker.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I have real strong opinions about baking because, this is my wheelhouse. But it was this brownie recipe. Now, they came out great. They taste amazing, but it was just unnecessarily fussy. And I was like, oh, you were going to make me buy like a $7 jar of this thing that I'm not even tasting in this recipe.
Yeah.
And then there was this whole step to like refrigerate it at the end. And I'm like, it's just not needed.
No bueno.
Not
Sorry.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have anything that exciting. I have, let's see, I made some, I every once in a while I try and experiment with something for my kids, just like get outside the box a little bit. There's an Instagram account that I follow, the Flexible Dieting Lifestyle.
Yeah.
FDL, Flexible Dieting Lifestyle. I think it's anyway, his name is Zach, and he's been around for a while. He's been in the recipe, macro-friendly recipe, social media game, probably one of the longest ones that's out there. Because now there's so many of them. Yeah. But like I go back and I'm like, whoa, you've been making content for a long time. He's quite good. And he's got tons of cookbooks out there, recipe books that are pretty legit. I've tried to make some of his stuff. Certainly gotten a lot of influence from him on my Ninja Creamy recipes. He's who I learned how to make the base recipe from. Or like I've adapted the base recipe from. But I tried to make his, he has this, the FDL, Flexible Dieting Lifestyle pizza recipe, his pizza crust recipe, which I made. And I made it recently, and I made it like thinking the kids might like it. They didn't touch it. But
You crushed it?
I crushed it. It's really good. It's like flour, all-purpose flour or self-rising flour, which is I come to find out, is basically all-purpose flour with baking powder
Sure.
and baking soda
In it.
in it already.
Yeah.
And then a little bit of coconut flour, a little bit of nutritional yeast, egg whites, and non-fat Greek yogurt. And it makes this dough that's like, you're like, what? This is like a paste. It's like a paste. And then you put it on a piece of parchment and you kind of like smear it into a circular shape. And then you air fry it or you bake it in the oven, just like pre-bake it. And then it's like, you pull it out and it's like, oh, this is like a crust. It's like a pretty good crust. Then you put your toppings on and then you slide it back in the oven and makes a pretty darn good pizza. And it's like, again, his whole thing is like, it's got to pass the taste test.
Right.
It's got to like, kids have to like it.
Right.
My kids would have liked it if they had actually tried it, but as they do with a lot of things, they don't even try stuff.
Sure.
And then it's got to be like macro friendly. So like, I think his pizza, the cheese pizza has like, it's like 550 or 600 calories, but it's got like 60 grams of protein in it or something.
Hell yeah.
Wild like that. So anyway, it's, again, it's like we've talked about it before. It's like you can go and have a pizza.
Yeah.
A real pizza.
Yeah.
But, you probably can't have like a 12-inch personal pizza, all to yourself and finish the whole thing without getting like 1,000 calories into you and not that much protein. But if you make something like this, then you can have a little bit more.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's that.
Yeah. Well.
Oh yeah, we should get into the topic of the day.
We have, and we have a listener question today.
Yes,
and
from
also,
Tor.
Yeah.
I'm going to just go ahead and read his message. And so in a recent podcast on the role of rest, we had touched upon a topic that I feel like resonates with many. For my part, I got used to very high intensity in my training on the daily. It almost is like an addiction to the feeling of having done something, like the need to do a workout like a Metcon or something that strains my cardio and my muscular system. I find it very hard to allow myself to slow down. Also, I have this issue of needing to earn my food. How do you manage letting go for yourself? Best regards, Tor. Nate was saying that he really resonated with this idea of like earning your food and that being like a very slippery slope trap that many people fall into. It's like, I've got to go and burn a bunch in order to earn the food that I'm eating. Or the flip side of that, it's like, well, I ate this thing, so I've got to go and burn it off. And the first part of what Tor was talking about is something that I definitely, I feel like is probably a very common feeling amongst anybody who was deeply engaged in CrossFit for a period of time, because there was sort of like, the culture was, didn't matter how much Olympic lifting your gym did or your program did, or how much, strength work you would do at the beginning of your class, or even if you happen to be at a gym that was doing accessory lifts, it always came down to like, okay, now we're doing the Metcon at the end. Everybody's doing the same thing. We all have a prescribed weight. We're going to race against the clock. And this is where the competitive nature and the camaraderie really kind of all swelled up into this high intensity effort. And there was always this feeling of like, you finish that, you've checked the box on your fitness. And typically when you finish that, it's, I'm breathing heavily. My muscles feel like they're about to, explode full of lactic acid, or like I did something that was so hard muscularly that like I failed a rep of something. And so it was the combination of like all of those feelings of like, I'm sweaty, I'm breathing hard, my muscles are burning. I feel this, sometimes a pump, or I feel like I went to failure, and okay, great, check. That's what makes a good training session. And there's this, it's almost like it's hard when you experience that to not equate that to like, whoa, I just did something super good for myself. Like, you're like, well, how could that not be good?
It felt so productive.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like, it just felt, I just did this super hard thing. I'm exhausted. That clearly means that like I must have burned like 1,000
Oh,
calories.
yeah, for
I must
sure.
have like, you know, I clearly did something, and now now I've earned the right to go out and, you know, party with my friends, drink the beers, go eat the whole bag of, or the whole, you know, basket of chips at the restaurant when they drop them on the table. And if you miss that, like if you're in that pattern and you have established that as like, this is the metric of I worked hard, I got a good workout, it's this feeling. Well, there's a lot of things that can stand in the way of you getting that feeling. There's, okay, maybe the workout just wasn't your wheelhouse. It didn't have the right movements and you couldn't push yourself that hard. Maybe there was an exercise that was super skill based and you had to rest a bunch during it. And these were like all of the things that people got frustrated with in that group fitness space. And that's what I would hear from my members. It's like, this workout sucked today. It's like, let's evaluate that. Why did it suck? Oh, because you weren't able to get that feeling. Because you had overhead squats and you had to go use a PVC pipe or an empty bar and didn't feel that hard, you know, or it was too complicated, you know, or like the RX was handstand pushups and you ended up doing, you know, I don't know, like downward dog pushups and you didn't feel like it was, you know, it wasn't the same stimulus, or there's something that just stood in the way of you getting to that feeling. And that feeling was oftentimes, you know, for most people, that's when I'm successful. And so if they couldn't get there, they were always just so disappointed in the whole process and the whole workout, the coaching, the whatever. And if you're Tor, I can understand why. It's like, because that was my addiction. I needed to feel that, to feel like I had done something good and to feel like, okay, now I can go out and like without shame and guilt, like eat food today.
Yeah.
And that's a rough place to be.
Yeah.
It's a place that I found myself too in, to a much greater extent. Like a good session or a good day of training for me was 60 to 90 minutes of cardio, an aerobic session, which was generally hard. It was an hour of lifting and then a couple tough interval metcons at the end. And that was a day of, you know, competitive games training for me. And that became my benchmark. It's like, if I don't get all those things in, then I'm not feeling like I got a good workout in, like I'm not making progress. And like, I was like tracking my calories, like, oh, look at all the calories that I burned in my 60-minute assault bike session. Like, okay, now I can go have this really nourishing, you know, breakfast with all the things that I'm going to have.
As someone who has now shifted out of that mindset, what do you think made the difference for you in being able to let go of that feeling?
This is what I like we wrote about this recently, not too long ago, in a blog or in a newsletter, and we talked about it here. It's like, it takes, it takes acknowledging that there's probably something wrong with that mindset. Like, or, you know, if you're not having a problem with it, and if it's just, you have no awareness that like, hey, this is problematic. Whereas Torah understands like, there's something problematic here. Like, I shouldn't feel like I have to go earn my dinner, you know, by crushing myself in the gym with something. Once you've established like, hey, there's something I might need to change here, then you have to take a risk. You have to take a risk initially to say like, okay, I got to try something new. And I think if you don't go into it with a plan of action and a way to sort of measure whether this new thing, this new approach that you're going to take is like a viable one for you, then you're setting yourself up for disaster, really. Because to change a ingrained behavior or like a habit, this thing that you believe, to change it, it's going to take a lot of work. And there is, no matter what you choose to do, like you're going to run into another obstacle down the road in this new path. So let's say you're doing like high intensity, you know, metcons every day. You can't give it up because it's got weights, it's got the breathing, it checks that box for you. but it's starting to run you down, or you're starting to feel like, man, I'm just dependent upon this thing. And what if it doesn't go right? Like, I just don't want to feel that anymore. So you're going to say, okay, I'm going to switch to doing more weight training focused. I'm going to start to do some more zone 2 cardio. Maybe I'm just going to walk more. Like you create a new plan of action based upon what you heard somebody talk about. Maybe you heard us talk about it. Maybe you saw another, coach discussing a similar thing. So now you're going to go start that plan, and that could be the perfect plan for you. But on week 6 or 8 of this process, you're going to have a setback. Something's not going to feel right. You're going to have a bad day, a bad week, and the progress that you thought you were making is going to take a turn. And if you aren't measuring that progress, if you don't have a way of like evaluating what are the steps I've been taking, what's been happening, and you're just going based upon feel, that first week or that first day where you run into an obstacle where you're like, oh, this, like I didn't feel like the feeling of like I didn't earn my dinner, or I didn't earn my carbs, I didn't earn that dessert, but I had the dessert anyway. When you fail and you don't have like a good foundation of evidence and data to sort of show you like, hey, you're making progress, you are going to go right back to your old habits and your old behaviors. You have not, like, everything was subjective at that point. Right. You've just been like, okay, someone told me this. Okay, the first couple weeks I felt good. I'm not feeling as good. Gosh, I feel like I look fatter. Like, key in on, I feel like I look fatter. Everyone's going to have a day where they look in the mirror and they're like, I look fatter. And you're going to be like, this whole zone 2 thing and lifting weights is not working. I got to go back to my high intensity thing. Yeah. And another example could be like, we talked about it in the context of dieting. It's like, I've always been low carb because carbs make you fat. It's like, but I feel like I need to have some more carbs. Like, I'm just struggling with this low carb life. Okay, so let's go switch up your macros. Let's start controlling for these variables and let's have some more carbs. And so you're like, you just kind of go for it. You're just like, oh, I'm just going to start eating more carbs. Yeah.
Bring on the 12-inch pizza.
Yeah. You don't track anything. You aren't measuring your weight. You're not, and after a week, like, things were going okay. And then you had a night out where you ate a bunch of chips and you had a pizza, and you wake up the next day and you're like, oh, I'm feeling a little bloated. I'm going to step on the scale. And you're like, whoa. And you step on the scale one day and it's like up. You're like, yep, I knew it. Carbs are totally fucking, they're the worst thing ever for me.
My mortal enemy.
And I'm going right back to keto. I got to go right back to low carb. Yeah. You didn't have any routine of tracking data, having a way of measuring, like, this is what I'm going to look for. This is what I'm going to measure, and for Tor, I don't know what it is. It could be, maybe he wants to measure actually his subjective feeling around, like, I don't feel as burnt out. I don't feel as much pain. Or he wants to say like, oh, like, I don't gain weight. Like, do I gain weight if I stop doing these high intensity metcons, or can I maintain my weight? Or can I lose weight potentially? Or can I still build muscle? Or whatever the thing that he cares, that he places a high value on. It could be a physical metric. It could be a psychological thing, which, we can take qualitative data points, but you have to do it consistently. And if he sees that 3 weeks, every day I wrote down, like, I'm in a better mood, I have better energy, I feel better about myself, like, I don't feel like I crushed myself. And then on the 21st day, he doesn't have that feeling. And then he looks at his notebook. He's like, oh, for 20 days, I've been in a good spot. And then I had one bad day. Like, I should maybe keep trying this thing, versus like kind of being unaware, hitting day 21, having a crap day, and then being like, well, F it. I'm not doing that anymore. I got to go back to, the thing that was working in air quotes, but not working.
I'd also like to advocate for the baby step approach when you are trying to change something as ingrained as these things, because I was just thinking back to my days of coming into functional bodybuilding from a CrossFit background myself. And I remember that I had zero concept of pacing. I had 2 speeds. When you're a 3-2-1 go type of person, that's all you know. It's like, oh, I'm supposed to just go as hard as I can now. And I was introduced to different types of formats of training through functional bodybuilding, like interval training, where you still got your Metcon with your assault bike and your burpees and your dumbbell snatches and your handstand push-ups. But the only difference is you're going to do this rep scheme and you're going to rest 2 minutes before you do the next round. And then the goal is not to go as fast as you can. The goal is to achieve consistent pacing all the way through. It's like mind blown, So there are still ways to feel like you check the box if that's who you are as an athlete and that's what motivates you and lights you up, but just in a way that doesn't necessarily have to have the same impact as the 4-time types of structures. And similarly with nutrition, if you do want to change the amount of carbs you're eating and test something out, it's like, okay, we can take this phase by phase and change something not dramatically for a while. You don't have to give up everything you know and become a high carb person. You don't have to give up everything you know and just become a lift weights and walk type of person if that doesn't fire you up.
Yeah. I mean, and to this specific hang up that Tor has, that is why we've kind of created the functional pump conditioning, our approach to conditioning inside of Persist.
Yeah.
It's like, these are Metcons, the Metcon terminology is it's an abbreviation of metabolic conditioning, which is just a very sort of loose, nebulous term that isn't really super specific, but it does refer to this idea that like you have different metabolic systems in your body. There's like the weightlifting, energy production pathways. There's the aerobic energy production. And then there's like the anaerobic, like the sprinting, and like a metabolic conditioning workout is supposed to kind of mix all of that together. And so we do that. We mix cardio with weights, but we do it with sort of like a edit to it where it's like, this is going to get you the best of all of these different systems, but we're going to sort of throttle back on the intensity by putting these little, call them like speed bumps in your way.
Exactly.
Right? Like you can't go 100 miles per hour down the road that has a speed bump every, 30 yards because you're going to break your car. You're going to damage your vehicle. You have to slow down. So we kind of put in those speed bumps so that you kind of are safer, and you can push yourself without worry of like going crazy. And a speed bump might be like that we use in these conditioning workouts is like, well, we're going to pick an exercise where you're like limited versus like a 315 deadlift in a Metcon. That's not a speed bump. That's a big green light to just go hard and go crazy and go, very,
and have your form disintegrate.
Yeah, and have your form
process.
potentially disintegrate. Right. So, we might do a 185-pound deadlift with a tempo inside of a conditioning workout. It's like, oh, I got to slow down. Oh man, I'm really feeling fatigue. I got to stop. I got to take a rest. All of that to just kind of put a little control into your, some control points or some speed bumps in your way.
Yeah. Yeah. And some of that's also movement selection. We're going to throw in a carry so that you can't like just race yourself to the finish line. But I will say that those workouts feel just as good and satisfying and sweaty and hard and like, oh yeah, hell yeah, I've like done something really great here, but without, getting to the point where your form just gets to the point where it hurts your body.
Yeah, well, that was always like my goal too. It was like, I'm not here to make you feel like you didn't work out hard.
Yeah.
Like, the idea of, a speed bump is not to make it like, you finish your workout, you're like, yeah, that wasn't that hard. Like, I know people need to have that feeling. The feeling can be achieved multiple different ways.
Yeah, you were yelling at Morgan from across the gym today. She thought she was done with her set, but Marcus said no way.
Well, I proposed it as like, I was like, I don't know. I think maybe you could get some more reps out of that. I was like, was that your last set? Are you going to go up and weight? And she's like, no, it was a PR. I was like, let's do some more, you know?
You're like, rest 30 seconds.
And then she flipped around, did the same thing to me. And I was like, okay, deal. You're right. I made you do it.
Yeah.
I did want to come back to this like concept of like earning your food and earning your meals, because, you know, that's not how metabolism works. I think there's still misunderstandings for people out there. The food that you consume, you know, it's not your job, or it's like, it's not your job first and foremost, but it's also not the reality that everything that you eat in a day, you have to go out and burn. You could literally eat like a whole lot of calories in a given day and do no exercise and burn it all off, because that's what our bodies need. They need energy just to function. You know, even just sitting here talking to you, like I'm fidgeting my leg right now, like that's burning calories. You know, we're going to walk up and down the steps 3 times during this podcast to go to the bathroom, to go get a snack, to go get a little coffee or whatever it is. That's energy. You know, that's not exercise. I just went downstairs and went upstairs. You add up all those different movements that you do throughout the day. You add up, you know, any extra steps or a walk that you go on. You add up just sitting here right now doing no movement. Like I'm breathing. Like there's metabolism happening. There's aerobic metabolism happening. There's something that's, when you breathe in oxygen and you breathe out CO2, that is there to help your body convert something into energy. That is burning energy. And so, you know, whatever you ate today, like a good portion of that, the vast majority of it is being burned outside of your training session.
Right.
And this is why we preach so much about working on the time outside of the gym if you're really wanting to be conscious of like changing your body. You want to change your body weight. You want to add more muscle. Well, guess what? You can go train hard, but it's the next 23 hours of the day after training that are going to set you up to build muscle. Why? Because you got to go eat enough food to build muscle. Same thing with losing body fat. It's like, well, all that time that you're not in the gym, there's steps that you could be taking. You could be standing more. You could be fidgeting more. You could chew gum, right, for hours, and that just chewing in your mouth. Those are just that's added energy that you're burning. It's not hugely significant. Like you can't chew gum and lose 20 pounds in a week. That's not the tool, but these things add up. There's a lot more opportunity to add up that extra energy expenditure outside of the gym than in the gym. And then in particular, I remember reading this early on in my CrossFit days. Rob Wolf wrote this article because he was like the nutrition guy.
Yeah.
He was like the zone diet, then the paleo instructor. He was running the CrossFit nutrition certs. And he wrote something about like CrossFit workouts do not burn a lot of calories. And I was like, what? I was like kind of pissed and annoyed
a lot
and
of
like
people were
angry at him. I was like, that's just bullshit. Like this is so hard. Like this has to be like, and he's like, no, if you really look at it, like you're, you know, even if you're doing like high, like the highest intensity Metcon and it's a 20-minute AMRAP, like the total caloric burn in that time is kind of negligible against your entire day of total energy output. Now that's obviously dependent upon the person, and you know if this person has a really they're sedentary the rest of the day. Okay, maybe the exercise portion of their day makes up a little bit more of their total daily calorie burn.
Yeah.
But either way, it's not the majority, and it's not that substantial. And especially and that's in the best case scenario with a CrossFit workout. Worst case scenario, you do a 3-minute Metcon that feels really hard, but it was 3 minutes of like hard activity. You can't burn that many calories in that time. So this equation of like, it was hard, therefore it burned a lot of calories is a very false assumption that people make.
Yes.
And it's what drives people into like, I don't know why this is not working for me to like change my body, yet they still like hold on to it. Like I got to go do this 15-minute, smash of my entire system so that I can go out and enjoy my dinner. And there's like the actual calorie kind of calculation, crunching the numbers, but then there's also this feeling of like, you can't eat without guilt and shame unless you've done the hard thing. And that is it's a really toxic like food like relationship
Yes.
that people can get into. And it's one to acknowledge, like if you have it, it's not like, there's nothing wrong with you for having gotten to that point, because it's very common, especially with the messaging around food and fitness and, earning this. And I really, I had to burn this off, and all the language that's been out there that I have been guilty of using at times in the past. But it is one that it's not a healthy mindset to be in. It's something that I would encourage you to evaluate in yourself, and then, okay, how can we start to take steps to unwind that?
Yeah. And I think that because of the way fitness feels on your body, there is so much focus on how you're eating to fuel that time that you spend in the gym. But if you look at a couple things, one is like imagining your activity on a line over 24 hours, and how much of that are you really doing, that much? It's like your workout, and especially your Metcon, is just a tiny little blip on that line. And second, if you look at the pie chart of how your body is burning calories, the vast majority, as you said, is just going to your daily existence, your sustenance, your digestion, your existence, your breathing, your body functions. And so, it's the data shows that like the food that you're taking in is more for just you to exist rather than, that tiny amount of time.
I just was laughing because I'm like, that's just a flex. It's like, man, I burned 3,000 calories just to exist.
just existing, baby.
I'm over here burning 3,000 calories just to grace you with my presence.
Grace you with my presence. Totally. But that's literally how it works. Yeah. Baby, I'm just breathing and burning so many calories.
Okay. Well, any final thoughts before we sign out on this one? We didn't really talk about how the bulk is going, but we can come back to that.
Yeah, we'll come back to it. My final thought is that if you have not tried functional pump conditioning, like you need that in your life.
For sure, yeah. Get over to the website, get the free workouts, or buy the functional pump conditioning ebook if you haven't before.
Yeah, try some of that out.
Yeah. And if there's anything that came up in this conversation, Tor, you want to follow up, please shoot me another DM, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
See you next time.
See ya.